Welcome viewers. If there's one sector that is not only the most impacted, but also leading from the front in this pandemic, it is the healthcare sector. The pressure on the sector has been real and immense, and very unlike what we have seen before. How can India's healthcare industry manage to bounce back and take part in recovering from the second wave? How can India rethink, reconfigure, and reinvent itself to emerge stronger than ever before out of the second wave? To discuss some of these aspects, I have with me my colleague, Dr. Rana Mehta. So, Dr. Rana, in the short run, how does the country get out of this current crisis? What should be the top 3 priorities for the healthcare sector in the near and mid-term? What are some of the key learnings that we have and what we must act on in the next few months?
Thank you, Arnab. I think this is probably the most serious healthcare crisis we've faced since independence as a nation. I think the first thing we should be cognizant of is not to let our healthcare infrastructure crumble, whether it's the manpower, whether it's medicines, or whether it's something as simple as oxygen. I think we have a big advantage this time. In the first wave, we didn't have the vaccine, and the vaccine can actually break this whole transmission link. And I think when we are vaccinating people, it's not only from a healthcare point, but you're also vaccinating the economy. Because we saw last time, this healthcare crisis caused an economic meltdown. And finally, I think we should be cognizant that this is not going to be the last wave. The pandemic's not going away. So we should not dismantle any healthcare infrastructure, build more infrastructure, and make sure when the next wave comes in, we are able to counter it so that both mortality and morbidity are less and we come out stronger as a nation.
So Rana, healthcare both in India and globally has always been reluctant to change, but change has been forced upon us in this pandemic. So how do you see healthcare really evolve in its delivery in the post-pandemic world?
Arnab, I think you're right. Healthcare, and I being a clinician, we've always been risk averse and resistant to change. But I think this is very unique because this is a pandemic where everybody gets impacted. When you normally go to a hospital, you're the only one at risk. But here it's not only you, it's the doctor, it's the nurse, and it's the caregiver. So makes it very, very different. And that's really catalyzed change in the industry. The whole virtual healthcare has been based on that. The second is, I think what's happened in healthcare, we've always looked at healthcare as something which is like actually acute episodic care. So if I have a problem, I go to a doctor or I go to a hospital. But what this pandemic has brought out, that healthcare is just beyond that component. The whole component of how do you stay safe? How do you make sure that you don't get the disease? How do you stay healthy has come up right in the forefront. I think the next change which has happened is that a lot of reliance on the data. The largest amount of data in the world is actually collected in the healthcare space, but it's rarely used. So when I treat a patient, I'm basing it on what I learned in medical school, what patients I treated, what I got from my journals. But today I have the power of AI, which tells me that the same condition in 200,000 patients, this was the medicine which was given. So I think the power of data properly used is empowering me and setting me up for success. I think that's the game changer which is going to happen going ahead. Arnab, the objective of a corporation has always been to enhance stakeholder value. But in the current pandemic, when society itself needs to be protected, it sometimes rings hollow. How do you think corporate social responsibility needs to be redefined? And how do corporations need to evolve for this major societal change?
So Rana, that's a great question and something which is uppermost in every corporate's mind right now. You're very correct that corporates have always been about maximizing stakeholder value. But I think we need to also think who are our primary stakeholders. It's not just the customers, but also our employees. And we will have a culture of employee first coming back into India Inc. very soon. And organizations are looking into it. It is not just about contributing towards vaccination. It is also about longer term commitments towards employee health, towards social health, and how we as a corporate would invest into getting the overall healthcare ecosystem improve in our country. So to that extent, I also think that this will become a boardroom agenda for every corporate going forward, because finally, if you do not look into this, it becomes an existential threat for any corporate. So, Dr. Arnab, one of the things which we have seen is that the pandemic has really exposed the fragility of India's healthcare system, both in the public and the private sector. So, what are the three building blocks you would say we should put in place to ensure that our future generations have less of this kind of issues, and we also make our healthcare both accessible as well as affordable?
Arnab, I think that's very important. What the pandemic has taught us that in India, we always spoke about a dual burden of disease. But I think now we have a triple burden of disease, acute, chronic, and the pandemic itself. I think the first component is to look at how can we counteract it. And do we have a playbook for doing so? I think the second component is that, we still don't spend adequately on public health. Just about 1% is the government spend. I think the pandemic, for various reasons, has made healthcare part of the national political discourse. And this is the time to look at how can we spend more to make sure that we have a robust healthcare system. And finally, I think we need to relook at our healthcare systems. When you access healthcare, there are three ways you can access healthcare. You have a geographical access. Do you have a hospital close to you? Can you go to a doctor? But 70% of India's healthcare infrastructure is just in 20 cities. The second is a financial access. And through the Ayushman Bharat scheme, the government's giving financial access to over 500 million people. But we got to realize that these are limited. The number of doctors, the infrastructure, and the financial capability is always going to be limited. So I think if there's a game changer, we need to look at a technological access to health. Healthcare which is 24/7, accessible to all. This hasn't been done anywhere globally, but I think in India, we are best poised to do this. And this could be truly a game changer to make sure that our future generations don't face this calamity which has befallen us now.
Thank you, Dr. Rana, and thanks for being candid and, more importantly, a very insightful discussion for us. I think the focus, not just in the short term, but also in the long term, the focus on how to access healthcare and how India really needs to rethink, reconfigure, and reinvent this extremely crucial sector to not only navigate the challenges of today, but also to invest and become fit for future is very, very important. Thank you, viewers, for tuning in. We'll soon be back with another very relevant topic. Until then, please take care, stay safe, and stay indoors.